last couple of years have been absolutely insane when it comes to remakes for JRPGs, and see, remakes can actually be pretty tricky. Sometimes they're just prettier versions of games we already loved, and other times they feel like a genuine second chance, not just for the developers, but for the players too. In JRPGs especially, a good remake or remaster can completely change how the story hits you. It's not always about higher resolution or faster loading times, it's about seeing how those old ideas hold up when you remove the limits they might have had when they first came along. Some of these remakes and remasters stay faithful, others take bigger swings, but all of them share one thing in common. They make you want to dive back into a game that either you haven't experienced yet or it's been forever since you got a chance to play it. Maybe you want to re-explore the worlds you already know and see them in a slightly different angle. Today, I want to go through 10 of the best JRPG remakes and remasters, the ones that respect the original vision, but also understand what modern players need. These are ones that actually get it right, and I've made one of these remake remasters lists before, but it's been a long time, and with all of the new remakes and remasters that have come out with JRPGs over the past couple years, you'll find that this list is full of amazing games that you really need to play. So with all that said, let's get into it. The remake of Trails in the Sky First Chapter really does an amazing job at modernizing something that was already timeless. It focuses on the details that matter, smoother pacing, a more modern and dynamic combat system, and visual upgrades that really make the world of Liberal feel new again. The biggest change is presentation, obviously. The updated visuals and voice acting give everything this special sort of feel that we all wanted. The voice acting takes things to another level, which helps Estelle and Joshua's personalities come through in ways that feel much more natural than ever before. Combat has been overhauled completely. Animations are faster and flashier, the chord system works to perfection, and everything just feels so fresh and new. None of this changes the rhythm, it's still a mix of positioning, planning, and orbment customization that makes the Trails combat loop so incredibly satisfying, but it all just feels smoother to actually play. What I like most about the remake is that it understands why the original worked. The slower pace, the focus on small town conversations, and that sense that every NPC actually matters, all of that is still here. It's not trying to compete with modern JRPG spectacle, it's just letting you enjoy what the Trail series does best. If you've never played the original, this is the best way to start, and if you already have, it's a great reminder of why Trail's world building still feels unmatched even all these years later. What I liked about Lunar is how simple it is. I was new to this one. The remasters were my introduction to the series, and what a great introduction it was. The original game had that old school adventure vibe, a small town hero, a dream that feels too big, and a world full of warmth and optimism. The remasters didn't need to change much, it just needed to give those feelings a better stage and allow for modern audiences to experience these classics. The environments and cutscenes gave the story a sense of scale that was ahead of its time. The soundtrack, I'm sure, is instantly recognizable to longtime fans and incredibly surprising to newcomers like myself. It's one of those where every track feels tied to a specific moment, and the localization, for all its quirks, made the dialogue sound more human, like real people talking instead of just stock characters or a completely forced script. These games aren't super long either, and the experience feels great due to its incredible pacing. I always felt like something new was happening or I was working towards something really exciting. It's still this cozy, heartfelt adventure about friendship and growing up, and what makes these games stand out even years later is how it handles sincerity. It doesn't try to wink at the player or modernize its humor, it just believes in what it's saying, and that confidence, that lack of cynicism is something a lot of games could really learn from today. Playing it now, you can see how much personality it had for the time. The remake keeps that intact, and that's why it still works. Lunar is the kind of story you can come back to after 20 years and still find something warm waiting there for you. I definitely see myself playing this time and time again. It's a really feel-good game that doesn't overstay its welcome. The thing about Final Fantasy Tactics is that it's already so perfect, in my opinion. There's nothing quite like this game. The deliberate pacing, the heavy political storytelling, and that soundtrack makes every victory feel well earned. So when Square Enix revisited it for the Ivalice Chronicles remaster, I knew this was going to be a hit. The new version cleans up everything that I've ever felt was clunky about the original. Menus respond faster, animations and visuals are just better, and the camera feels less rigid. Now, don't get me wrong, it still gets in the way at times, but it's heavily improved, especially with that over-the-top tactical view. One of the biggest additions, the Chronicles, helps flesh out the story and add context to some of the more complex narrative moments. The result of all these additions is that the story comes through as clearly as it's always deserved to. You feel the weight of every decision Ramza makes, the politics that spiral out of control, and how each moment affects everyone involved. Replaying it now, I realize how few games try to be this ambitious anymore. It's strategic, but also deeply personal. And with this remaster, it finally looks and plays like the timeless piece it always has been. Ys is a series I've wanted to dive deeper into, so when the Oath and Felghana came out, I knew I wanted to give this one a go. This might be one of their best remakes. It's technically a remake of Ys 3, but in practice, it's an entirely different experience. Faster, smoother, and far more satisfying to play. What makes Felghana stand out is its pacing. There's no downtime. Combat feels sharp and rhythmic. Movement has weight, and every boss fight is designed to test your precision. It's the kind of game that teaches you by letting you fail quickly, learn instantly, and get right back into the fight. This whole gameplay loop is incredibly addictive. I was carrying my Switch around the house just constantly playing this game. I flew through it even though I had a difficult time with it. I kept going. And yes, you can knock down the difficulty and that helps with the fights, but the platforming elements are also super difficult. So yeah, you're in for one with this one. The modern remaster doesn't add a lot of flashy features, but it doesn't need to. The bump in resolution, the improved frame rate, and the subtle audio updates just make an already great action game feel completely timeless. What I've always liked about this game in particular is how it finds a sense of heart in a story that could have been just a complete throwaway. The story and setting end up feeling real because of all these small moments. The characters who quietly change as the story goes on, the hints of tragedy that give context to the more action elements. If you've never touched the Ys series, or say you just came in with Ys 8, the most popular one, Felghana is still one of the best entry points. It's a remake that understands exactly what to preserve, fast gameplay, great music, and a story that hits harder than you'd ever expect. The Suikoden remasters are so great, and this is another set of games that I hadn't got into prior to the release of these remasters. These games always had this very particular feeling and aesthetic and have always interested me. I just never found the right time to jump in. Seeing them finally return with proper care and attention feels overdue, but also it's really special. Visually, the HD updates are subtle but really well done. The character sprites have cleaner outlines and the new visuals add so much to these classics. They really do look great. The backgrounds especially, those painterly townscapes and fields, now have real depth to them, and the music, it's incredible, especially Suikoden 2. That soundtrack is really special. Gameplay wise, these remasters seem to fix the small things. Load times are nearly instant, battles transition seamlessly, and the menu navigation is smoother than what I've seen in the past. It's small quality of life improvements, but it definitely changes the flow of the game. The best part is that none of the personality seems to be lost here. The writing is incredible. The characters are great. The sense that every recruit, every member of your 108 stars carries their own story. That's what Suikoden was all about. The connections between people and the idea that even small actions can ripple into something much, much bigger. Playing through these new versions, I realized how forward-thinking these games really had to be for their time. They didn't need complete reinvention. They just needed a second life and to be more accessible to modern audiences, and that's exactly what these remasters give them. I think Final Fantasy VII Remake surprised a lot of people, myself included, not just because it looked incredible, but because of how bold it was. Instead of simply rebuilding the original, it chose to reinterpret it and take things in a completely different direction. The remake focuses entirely on Midgar, expanding that one section into a full game. Every corner of the city feels alive. The characters, especially the core characters, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, have more personality than ever, and the writing takes what we remember and gives it new layers, sometimes in ways that really make you question what's even really going on. The combat, though, that might be the biggest and best change in my opinion. It's this hybrid between action and turn-based command that shouldn't work as well as it does. You get the satisfaction of direct control without losing the tactical depth that defined the series for all these years. It is honestly my favorite combat system in all of Final Fantasy. And then talking about Rebirth, because I kind of did a 2-for-1 with this entry, That takes that foundation and opens it up and builds on it in a multitude of ways. It's bigger, more adventurous, but still intimate in the moments that matter. It's hard to talk about it without spoilers, but it's clear the developers aren't afraid to take risks here, even if it means reshaping what we thought we knew about the original story. Some fans love that direction, others don't, rightfully so, but what I respect is that it feels intentional. It's a remake made by people who clearly care about the meaning behind the original. Not just its plot points or the writing or the game itself, it's bold and it's not finished yet. We still have a part 3 coming, and that's what makes each one of these parts so significant and exciting to follow. I loved Remake. Rebirth's one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. You can't miss these games. You definitely have to play them. When Atlus announced Persona 3 Reload, I wasn't sure how much they could really add. The original game already had such a distinct tone and story, but what Reload does well is give the original story some upgrades that really help bring it into the modern era. The new visuals go a long way. Everything from the lighting in Tartarus to the layout of the dorm feels more alive, and the character models finally have like the emotion the original game was getting at. The story beats are the same, but the delivery is sharper, not just because they rewrote it, but because the performances here are really, really great. Gameplay feels smoother too. You can tell they borrowed lessons from Persona 5. Battles flow better, the interface is cleaner. It's basically the classic Persona 3 with all the bells and whistles from Persona 5. Even so, Reload doesn't try to turn this into a different game. It's still basically just Persona 3, darker, slower, a bit more weird, but definitely Persona 3 at its core. The new soundtrack arrangements are great, not replacements, just improvements. I love all the Persona soundtracks, and this is definitely one of my favorites. I listen to it on the regular. What I really appreciate about Reload is that it doesn't steer away from what makes Persona 3 different. It's not as flashy as 5, and it's not as, self-contained of a story as 4. This remake respects that tone completely. It's something really original, and I really love it for that. Reload is actually, in my opinion, the best kind of update. One that makes you appreciate what was already there, just with more clarity and confidence, and I love Reload, and can't wait to play it again when it comes to the Switch 2 soon. There's something comforting about Dragon Quest III. Even if you didn't grow up with it, it feels like the definition of a JRPG. It's the archetype, the hero's journey, the simple structure, the bright sense of adventure, all these things that you look for in a comfort food JRPG. The new HD 2D remake captures all of that and somehow makes it feel brand new again. The art direction is gorgeous. Every scene looks like it could be a diorama. Layered pixel art, soft lighting, and just the right amount of depth. Gameplay is almost unchanged, and that's exactly the right choice if you ask me. The turn-based battles, the exploration, the job system, they all hold up super well. The big improvements are quality of life stuff. Faster battles, better menus, and smoother transitions, and the best implementation of the HD 2D art style out there, hands down. What makes the remake shine to me is just how much confidence it has in the core mechanics. It doesn't need to change much at all, and it's still special in so many ways. It just leans into what Dragon Quest has always been about, and I love it for that. You can tell it was made by people who understand that this series doesn't need to evolve constantly. It just needs to be presented well and respected for what it already is. The HD 2D remake does exactly that. It's probably the most faithful but fresh remake we've ever gotten in the genre. When Bravely Default first came out, it felt like a game that was set to revive turn-based RPGs again. That was a thing that was happening during the time of this release, where RPGs that were turn-based were kind of getting phased out a little bit, and yeah, I was a little bit disappointed. But when Bravely Default came around, it wasn't trying to reinvent the genre. It was trying to prove that this classic formula still worked if you gave it attention and care. The HD version of Flying Fairy doesn't really mess with that. It just gives it the polish it needed and access on modern platforms. The visual upgrade is striking. These storybook towns and hand-painted environments look stunning in HD. It finally looks the way I had always remembered it. Combat is still the star of the show. The Brave and Default system remains one of the smartest twists on turn-based battles ever, giving you control over risk and reward in a way that feels simple but endlessly flexible. The remake just makes it all cleaner. Animations are faster, effects are clearer, and it's easier to manage your strategies on the fly. The updates to the Switch 2 version are more subtle. Quicker load times, slightly refined balance, and a couple of small quality of life features here and there. You can play this version straight through, and some of the upgrades here actually make that long drag at the end of the game a little bit easier to get through. I love Bravely Default. It's one of my all-time favorite JRPGs, and this remaster is easily the best way to experience it. In fact, there are so many hidden gems on the 3DS. I hope this means we get more remasters of them on the Switch too. Now, before we close this one out with the final game, and I do want to say this list is not in any order. These games are all so great, so I couldn't rank them top 10. These are just 10 great JRPG remakes and remasters, but I do want to get in a few honorable mentions. There's just so many great JRPG remakes and remasters out there. Like I said, the past couple of years have been full of them, so I couldn't close this out without listing a couple more for you guys to play. Raito Remastered: The Mystery of the Soulless Army is a great example of how preservation can still feel like complete renewal. I haven't played any of the originals, and they're almost impossible to get your hands on. They always piqued my interest though as a fan of SMT and Persona, so this always just felt like a must-play for me. This is a unique mix of detective stories with demon negotiation, real-time combat, and that Tokyo backdrop that gives them a totally different flavor from the mainline SMT series. It's a purely action JRPG with some cool elements to the combat system. I had a lot of fun with it. Is it as revolutionary as some of the other Atlas games out there? No, but it is a really unique and fun time. The biggest thing here is definitely accessibility. You can finally play this game without jumping through hoops. It's weird, stylish, and kind of haunting, and actually a perfect Halloween game, I think. It's hard to think of a remake that nails tone as perfectly as Super Mario RPG. It looks better, sounds better, and still plays exactly the way it should. The new models have this soft, toy-like quality that fits perfectly with the humor and charm of the original. They didn't overcomplicate it. The combat is identical, just with a bit more feedback on its timed hits. The new battle camera and animations make things easier to follow, but it all feels natural. You could hand this to someone who's never touched the SNES version and they'd understand why it's so loved. It's one of those remakes where you can tell the developers genuinely care about what they're updating. They knew the best thing to do was just make it easier to enjoy this game, and sometimes that's enough. Romancing Saga 2 was always a bit of an acquired taste. I mean, the whole series kind of is, if I'm being honest. Open-ended, non-linear, and incredibly ambitious for its time, the Revenge of the Seven remake smooths out its roughest edges without taking away that experimental core. The art direction is fantastic. This is a completely overhauled remake that really takes the original and brings it to a modern quality in ways few games achieve. The biggest improvement is definitely usability. The remake finally explains itself better. There's huge improvements across the board with this one, but the remake finally explains itself a little bit better. What the Dynasty system does, how your decisions echo through time, and how the different eras connect. It doesn't make the game easier, it just makes it understandable, and for this game in particular, that's probably the most important thing. This is still a Saga game through and through, strange, unpredictable, and full of systems that take time to appreciate, but for fans of old school experimentation, this remake is a great reminder of how great the series can be. Now finally, last up on the list. If there's one remake that completely turned things around for my opinion on the series as someone who really doesn't care for Star Ocean, it's definitely Star Ocean: The Second Story R. The original was solid, but definitely dated, full of great ideas. In fact, the remake finally delivers on what those ideas were meant to be. The art style is immediately striking. The pixel characters layered over 3D environments give it a unique personality. Many people consider this an HD 2D game, and while it feels similar in a lot of ways, it's more like a HD 3D implementation of that art style. There's a lot of original, thoughtful touches to the art style here that you won't find anywhere else. Combat has been reworked from the ground up. It's fast, flashy, and easy to get your head around, but it still gives you the same control and flexibility. Skills change smoothly, the camera feels better, and everything just feels more fluid. What really surprised me is how well the writing holds up. Claude and Raina's story, this mix of sci-fi and fantasy, feels grounded in a way that it never fully did before. The voice acting and pacing bring out the emotional beats without adding anything unnecessary. It's not just the best version of Star Ocean 2, it's one of the most confident JRPG remakes in years, and in fact, I think this is the best Star Ocean game. Anyway, that's it for me in this one. What I like about all these remakes and remasters is that they all do something a little different. They each do something purposeful, they make great games playable again, they polish ideas that deserve more time, or they just remind us why we fell in love with the genre in the first place. A remake doesn't have to change everything to matter. Sometimes it's enough just to help a good story find its audience again. That's what I think ties all these together, whether it's Suikoden, Star Ocean, Persona, or any of the other ones on this list. They're all games that care about where they came from. And when you see that kind of care, it's easy to get excited about what comes next. If there's a remake that meant something to you, one that made you look at an old favorite in a new way, let me know in the comments below. I look forward to reading all your thoughts. Until next time, I'm out.
I'll make it hurt. The bad boys get punished. See? Feeling good. You're up, Joshua.
Better be prepared.